Hey guys, it's Dr. Christopher Holmes here, back with Fully Engaged Education. So today I decided that it was important for me to bring to you a small section of a larger professional development that I present entitled Engaging Students in a Virtual Setting. This particular session I'm going to talk to you about is about gradual release and guided instruction. I think this is important as many of us are already back in schools and we're preparing our students to be engaged in content standards. This is going to help you think about how you plan out your instruction, the incremental amounts of information you decide to give your students, and what they can do to demonstrate their understanding in a gradual release type format. Remember, we can't teach 35, 40 minutes like we used to through content, through a PowerPoint, and expect students to be fully engaged if they're in a virtual setting and they're not in front of you. You can't gauge how they're receiving the information virtually as well as you can when they're face to face. So I'm going to get into this training with you just like I do all my trainings. This is very comfortable, very laid back. I will crack a joke. Sometimes I tell a story. I always have my coffee handy. So if you're watching this, grab your coffee, grab your tea, whatever it is that you need to stay in tune with me, to be engaged with me. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment in the sections on YouTube where you may be watching this, or if you're watching this on Facebook. Feel comfortable to drop a comment or a suggestion, or reach out to me through my email. You can go to my email via the website, which that information will be provided. So as you can see, this guided instruction sample lesson is going to be over a middle school topic, which is atomic structure. I'm here in the state of Georgia, so we'll be looking at specifically 8th grade standards in science related to physical science, discussing this particular topic. So let's get into what students are expected to do. And we need to make sure that students have what is needed before instruction start. So what you will see if I pause this for you real quick. So for this particular lesson, I use Google Classroom as a sample platform for virtual learning. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're virtual face-to-face, you can still use Google Classroom with your students. But for this particular task, all of the documents that the students will need to access, they will already have prior to instruction. That's part of your proper planning. Decide on what you need, give them the information, and then have it located so they can easily access it. So the students will be able to pull these documents up as I provide instruction to them virtually. And I will tell them what document to pull up and at what time. So that is very important. Make sure your students have exactly what they need before you start the instruction, and make sure that all the students have access to that information before you start teaching. You don't want to get anybody behind, or you don't want anybody to be lost as you're providing this guided instruction. So moving on, what are students expected to know, do, and understand? I want students to know what an atom is, and at this point, I just also want them to know what is the composition of an atom. That's simply it. Two small ideas. It is not overwhelming at all. This is small and incremental amounts. All of my students, PEC, 504, all of my students should be able to ascertain this information by the end of the instructional time. So let's get into what we will be doing. So I ask my students to go to the classroom or the platform, whatever platform I'm using, and then access those particular tasks or handouts that I need them to look at. And they will have video handouts, a guided instruction handout, a periodic table. Also, their independent practice handouts will be located there. I will let them know what I need them to access at the appropriate time. But the goal is, once again, is that the information is available for everyone to access. Let's start the video. All right, I'm going to stop there. So let's go. I will tell the students at that time to go and pull up the atomic structure handout, which looks just like the one from the video. Now you can print this out for them, or you can have this located somewhere on that platform. So as you can see, this is the actual screenshot from the video. So we will go over what they just saw. Not only will the students go over this information, but I also want the students to complete it. Okay? So once we watch it one time, I will go back and we will fill this in. So once again, looking at exactly what was on the video, they will fill in atoms, nucleus, the electron cloud, and then 3 subatomic particles. We will talk about those things in general, talk about their discussion. But remember, the learning target was, I know what an atom is, and I know the composition of an atom. So all I really want them to know is the nucleus, the electron cloud, and that every atom has protons, neutrons, besides hydrogen, of course, and then electrons. Okay, we're not focused so much on the location yet. We're focused mainly on the composition because that's all the learning target asks for, correct? Now, why is that important? That is so important because you want the students, one, to understand what is expected of them that day. Number two, you want to hold tight to the things that you said the learning will encompass so that they trust you. Okay, that is one of the ways you will always maintain student engagement, is that they trust you. So what you say they will do, they will do. They won't feel overwhelmed, or they won't feel as if they can't access or master the information that you're giving them, because you have already defined in advance how much they can obtain, okay, how much they can process, and then you want to rehearse that information over and over and over, so that we can get it logged into their long-term memory. This is something I talk about all the time with students, especially struggling students or your IEP students. Small information rehearsed, so that they can pull it back up, recall it when they need to, and they're not, what I say, they're not retaining and dumping as new information comes in, okay? So let's go to what's next. So after we would watch this video, they would fill out the handout themselves. So now that handout they've just filled out is now acting as a resource that they can use, right? That's the most important thing. We don't want to provide instruction and the students are left with no resources to work independently. So your instructions should serve as a resource. Let me say it again. Your instructions should serve as a resource, a tangible resource, not the expectation that they have remembered everything that you said. So now we're going to go through this. I'm going to give them the sample structure. Just want to make sure that they understand what we talked about. Remember, the learning target is I understand what an atom is and I know what the composition of an atom is. So they should be able to explain to me as I question individual students. Remember, I'm looking for feedback from them. I need to hear from them. I need to assess their understanding. That they would know that this is a nucleus, that this nucleus is comprised of protons and neutrons. I'm not worried about the number yet. That this location outside the nucleus is the electron cloud, and that the electron cloud consists of electrons. That's it. So that's really simple. The beginning stages of learning. Just a little bit of information that I think the students can obtain with me. I'm asking questions. This is also serving as my form of informal formative assessment for them. But I need to make sure that I'm asking enough students, if not all of my students, as I go through this particular period. This is critical because I'm laying the foundation for what they need to do. Once again, we're going to rehearse, but we're going to look at it now from an atom's perspective. Now, I am just now previewing for them where I'm going. Haven't moved there yet, but I'm going to let them know this is the atom of the element helium. We're going to talk about the protons. We're going to talk about the neutrons. We're also going to talk about the electrons. Also identify the nucleus and the electron cloud. Okay? If you have any questions for me, go ahead and drop those questions right now in the comment section if you're on YouTube or Facebook. Okay? And I will start tackling those questions for you. In the meantime, let's move on. Now, I'm also going to give the students a second example of an element and its subatomic particles, okay, and its atomic structure. So we see protons, we see neutrons, we see the nucleus, we see the electron cloud, and we see electrons. Now, if you notice, the nucleus and the electron cloud are not labeled in this picture, but as I begin to ask questions, they should be able to tell me where these two things are in this diagram. Remember, I've used a video already. They have a handout that is a visual example, and I'm using increased visual representation of the content, right? So I'm not just telling them, I'm showing them what I need them to see, know, and understand. This is critical. This is very critical. And now I am previewing where I am going with them, and they will be familiar with some of this language as I go into this next topic, as we start using elements to describe subatomic particles and atomic configurations. Okay? So, slow, incremental, very clear and concise, specific to the student's learning. Transfer that information through communication very clearly. Use multiple examples of the content and a realistic context if you can. If you can. Some things are so abstract you can't pull in a context that they may be familiar with, but you can try your best. Okay? So, as I've done that, we've asked questions. They have a resource now. Now we need to go a little bit deeper. And we're going to do that through some notes. Okay? Not a whole lot of notes. Remember, we don't have a lot of time. These students are in a virtual setting. We need to give them what they need in order to perform and practice. So in order to do that, they are going to get a guided note handout. So what does that look like? So if they go back to their classroom, wherever that platform is, whether it be Canvas, Google Classroom, whatever they're using, they need to go and pull up their components of the atom. So these would be my notes, okay? I would go through these notes talking about the nucleus, the protons, the neutrons, the electrons. It gives more specific details about the subatomic particles, including their charges, their weight, and their locations, and then it compares them to each other. This is the student's form from what I just showed you. I have gone through and created a guided notes handout for the students based on this information. I've done that already. I'm not asking them to read this and pull out what's important. I am detailing for them by blank spaces what is important and what they need to know. This too, when we finish, will serve as a resource for them for what I need them to do next. Now, you don't want them to just take notes. You're also going to ask questions from the notes that you give them. Details, specific questions to all, if not most of your students. You want to see where their understanding is, okay? Now, what I forgot to do was go ahead and redefine new learning targets, because what we're moving into is not going to encompass, or is going to be a little bit more ahead or above what we had described before. So our new learning targets are one, I can describe subatomic particles, because I just told you these new notes will give them charges, weights, and the comparison between the other two or all three of the subatomic particles. And then number two, I can explain the subatomic structure of an element. Now bringing in the elements, which means we're going to be using the periodic table now. This is way more than just being able to discuss what an atom is and to talk about its structure. Okay, we're going deeper. We're going deeper. Now let me stop and say this. If your students aren't ready to move on to this particular learning target or these learning targets, you need to continue to rehearse with them and provide more support and instruction. Maybe reteaching in a different way. Don't move on if the students aren't ready and you have enough evidence, whether it be qualitative or quantitative, to determine how you move and how fast you move with your students. After we go through the notes, the students will have this chart available to them. I'm not asking them to copy it down. That's going to take too much time. But basically, I'm letting them know, because once again, they have it in written form, but charts are so much easier to read for some students. So here are the three subatomic particles. Here are their masses or AMUs, their relative charges, and then their location. Once again, I'm using more language, so now this doesn't say electron cloud, it says orbital. But they need to be very clear that those two things are in sync. They're the same idea. Orbitals and clouds are the same thing. The language is important. But more importantly, I've shown them a physical representation of what the orbital is. And then they're going to draw out for me the structure of an atom. Okay? So before they do that, I need to show them. So let's look at this. So once again, we're talking about this from an elemental standpoint. We're using the periodic table. So here is the symbol for nitrogen, the atomic mass, as well as the atomic number. They should know or be very familiar with the structure of an atom, but this is of a specific atom of nitrogen. Okay, so they will see that this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 protons, located in the nucleus, we would have gone over through our notes. So this is part two. I kind of got cut off from part one, but I want to finish up this example using nitrogen as an example to talk about its atomic structure. So once again, we have the atomic number, the symbol, the name, and also the atomic mass. You want to be sure that your students, or that you correlate what's in this diagram to the atomic structure by looking at the nucleus, the subatomic particles that's in the nucleus being protons and neutrons, counting out those protons, make sure it's 7, that it aligns to the atomic number, that the kids identify the orbitals or the electron cloud, and that there are 7 electrons in this electron cloud, as well as this atomic mass of 14, which is correlated to the total number of protons and neutrons inside the nucleus. So you want to make sure you give them more than one example. So we're going to also look at oxygen. Here we know that this is a nucleus. They should be able to tell you, and this is identified here, there are 8 protons, 8 neutrons. 8 protons representing the atomic number, 8 neutrons representing the atomic mass, and there are 8 electrons in the electron cloud or in the orbital space. So as a quick check, I will give them an assessment just to check their understanding. They would have to go through these 4 quick questions. Which particles occupy their space surrounding the nucleus? They should be able to tell me what that answer is, and they'll just go through and answer all of these questions. Of course, each one will give them the answer and the explanation. Now they can do this on their own, or they can do this with you. It's up to you. Once again, if you want them to do this on their own, this link should be uploaded into the platform that you use, and then you can kind of come back together, because you'll be able to check their answers as a class, and then give them feedback in terms of their next steps for the subsequent class session. All right. So once we do that, that class session is now over. Now those 4 questions will only relate to the learning targets here. Okay. Not beyond, not anything that I wanted to preview, just based on the learning targets. All right. Now, we will keep moving forward the next day. We want to fill out this table. We're going to continue looking at the periodic table. This is my table. The students will be asked to complete another table using the periodic table that they will be provided. This is the sample periodic table that will be given to the students in their platform, and they will be asked to complete this particular handout. Now this is guided instruction. They will be completing this handout with me. Okay, we will do this together, but the students will be given the information. So they're given the atomic number. They will give me the element name, the atomic mass, the protons, the neutrons, and electrons. We will go through this together. If I wanted to, as we go through this, I could be giving them the visual examples of each atomic structure for each element to help bring that together. And when we finish, I will show them the completed chart, which is here, and they will make sure that they have all of the correct information. There are some supplemental information for them to access as well that they can do, like this particular table here. This is something I would use more for an intervention. For my students who haven't quite gotten it yet and we're moving more into independent practice, I will give them this activity to do just to really hone in on those skills that I need them to have to understand the atomic structure of an atom, and then give them some questions to help them to explain their understanding. But that too will already be available. When it's needed, I will then direct them to completing that task. Okay. Then it's time to move on to some gradual release. So students will be asked to now do this. I feel like at this point, if they have provided me evidence that they're ready to move on, then they can do this independently. After we've completed the table and I've given them the model of each atomic structure for the first 10 elements, we should be ready to move on without me. So they're going to complete this activity on their own without me, being able to answer the questions as well. Okay, very simple, to the point. Should help them understand what's going on. Now that once again, they have resources I've already given them. They have the table, they have the chart from the video, they have the guided notes, and they also have the 2 pictures that are in the PowerPoint that they will also have readily available to them in their student sections on their platforms. Now, the next stage would be to give them opportunities to be engaged with the learning. So this is beyond me asking questions. So in this professional development, I dive a little bit deeper into how we can get students more involved in the learning process. But what I just covered with you was guided instruction, the importance of having a clear plan of what you will do to model and provide examples to students, using your instruction as a resource, and then determining when is it appropriate to release the students to work independently and provide feedback on the work that they do based on what you have already done and developed a plan for. Once again, I said that if there are students who you are sure have not accessed that content yet or have developed the understanding that's needed to work independently, you want to also have reteaching or interventions already in place to redirect them or to direct them to help support what they need to know before you let them work independently. If students aren't ready to work independently, it does not make sense to ask them to do so. You already know they're not going to be successful. And remember, in this virtual setting, we're trying to increase engagement and increase motivation so that they work actively and participate every day. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I enjoy sharing with you every chance I get an opportunity. Once again, my name is Dr. Christopher Holmes, and this is Fully Engaged Education. If you would like to reach out to me and inquire about some services so that we can collaborate together, please feel free to reach out to me via the website or via my email, which I will provide in the description below the video. Thank you so much. Once again, you can also see me on Thursdays at 9 o'clock for Teacher Talks. I'm currently doing a series on reshaping the color and culture of American education, the need for cultural sensitivity and culturally responsive instruction. It's a great series. I look forward to hearing from you, and until then, be blessed.